handouts or messages that go along there. At this point, I'm going to go ahead and pass this on to Greg Hill Jr.
Thanks, Judy. Hi, everyone. I hope we see you. You're doing well today as well. What I wanted to take a look here. What's the general makeup of our group? Presumably, lots of administrators, right? Sorry, I was just getting a sense of the makeup of the group. Okay, so before we get going, please, take a second here. Okay, lots of administrators. So administrators, consortium directors, and then 3 consortium staff members. Okay, that's good. This is good. Thank you. So, if you haven't filled out this poll about where you are in the planning process, please do. This is not a test. It's to gauge potentially what additional supports we ought to be providing. Good, thank you. Good job, everybody. And those 2 intrepid folks who have identified that you haven't started yet, it's okay. You'll get through it, I promise. Those 3 of you who are well into the planning process, kudos to you. If you haven't done a strategic planning, gone through a strategic planning process before, on average, and this is going to vary significantly, but on average it takes about 6 months to really make it work. And so it's still possible. If you've done it before, you know the ins and outs, the ups and downs, and so you're no doubt already on track. So, okay, perfect. Let's go to the next slide. Okay, our goal today really is to do a couple things. One, to provide an opportunity to review trainings, materials, and planning resources that have already been made available, and just to remind you where they are, how to get to them, and also, if there's an opportunity to do so, to try to capture some additional information about resources that you may need. Additionally, to have a structured discussion around strategic planning, in particular as it relates to pre-planning in the 3-year planning template. And so as part of that, we'll talk a little bit about the self-assessment tool, which we previewed in an earlier webinar, but we're going to go into a little bit more detail. The structure of today's webinar, we have 3 parts really. We're going to go through those planning activities and resources, and then we're going to start talking about strategic planning in context, and those other 2 will follow from, topics will follow from that. If folks have already done the self-assessment and have some positive or negative experiences to share, round them up, get them into your offices because we'd like to hear it. All right, so it sounds like I need to speak up a little, is that right?
A little bit. You kind of go down a little bit towards the end of your sentences.
Now I'm completely in your ears. Okay. Okay, so planning activities and resources review. Neil, this is largely going to be you, but let me just set it up for you and to say that, all of us in the TAP team and at the AEBG office have been, coordinating to figure out how best to deliver the resources that you need, as well as identify which resources are going to be most valuable, and have developed even a nifty tool to help you identify them. And so, Neil, I think, do you want to take this on?
Sure. Yeah, thanks, Greg. I'm just going to take a few minutes because I know there's so much information out there that we've created the planning tool. We've put it in the newsletter. It's on the front page of the website. And hopefully some of you have been using this. You can access this information on its own in the website, but we decided to create this planning tool to kind of organize and allow you to wade in via drop-down menus to access this information. So let me quickly kind of show you what's available. And so, along with webinars, training, guidance, template, planning resources, all kinds of stuff, I'm going to get right into it. And here's the front page. So if you go to the website and click on Planning Tool, it brings you to this space on our website. And there's a couple of drop-down menus there. And if I drop down and focused on planning, the first thing I would look at, is my annual plan, 3-year planning. There's also some data tools available. We also have adult education reports available to help you, whether it's class report, last year's end of the year report, Hanover's report, various other reports. We have promising practices. So these are practices that other consortia have submitted in a wide variety of areas. We have the e-magazine, which was done last year, highlighted some best practices there as well. Hanover also highlighted some best practices. So lots to look at there. And then we also have economic data, LMI data, centers of excellence data, supply and demand tools. If you attended the training that Randy Tillery did this fall, you would have been very familiar with that. We also have partner and other resources, so that would be the WIOA planning guidance that the workforce boards are using, as well as the WIOA planning partner directory that includes all the libraries, CBOs, social services, workforce, economic development, you name it, in the region, and it's separated out by workforce development area. So that's very helpful as well. We also have other partner resources like Strong Workforce, and we have a nice non-credit write-up by San Diego Consortia, as well as some other interesting resources and reports. And then finally, we have the actual package that Greg's going to go over today, the self-assessment, the student progress framework, and the template itself, the guidance, and the 3-year planning template. All that's available through that planning guide that you can access, or you can just click and search for this stuff. We thought the planning resource website would be a nice tool for you to use. And I'll turn it back to Greg. I just wanted to make sure everybody was aware of those. And Greg's got so much more to share, so I'm gonna answer your questions offline. And take it away, Greg.
Thanks, Neil. Yeah, there's really a wealth of resources there, and we're still putting out new resources. As even now, there are at least 2 more that we're working on our side that I can say I'm really excited about, and I think will really help with your planning. We've got our fact sheets coming back out, but with lots more data, lots more visual interest. And it also represents the 2017 ACS data and more, which is just came out. So it is as current as it can be. I would plop it on screen, but I don't want to mess up things. So, as well as an interactive map that will show you, allow you to drill down into some of the, actually it didn't drill down, but really see where your consortium area region, how it compares to others within the state based on a number of different variables, demographic as well as what enrollment data we're allowed to use. And the purpose here is not to, show, hey, we're better than you or whatnot, but more accurately to identify areas that really match, correspond to your consortium region. So regions that have similar types of demographic characteristics, similar enrollments and program areas, so forth, or perhaps different enrollment, so that you can identify perhaps partners with whom you can connect with across the state to see how they're doing, what they're doing, and maybe develop and adjust your own programs accordingly. And of course, not the least of which, develop and cultivate those relationships with other consortium leads that will, and members that will, help with long-term success as well. So all of you responding in the chat pod, we've got all the resources shared with you. Which of you already used? Okay, the planning tool website, good. A few human-centered design folks. Using local data tools for planning resources. I think that is, I'm trying to remember what that is. I think is that Randy's training? Economic labor market tools, that's good. That's the COE stuff. Good, good, good. lot of folks, of course, the guidance, planning template. Oh, not enough of you have gotten into the logic modeling template. Oh, lovely, Jody. Yeah, share your fact sheet with me. Send it over. Let's have a look. Oh, good. Some of you have actually used the self-assessment tool. That's going to be very curious. Excellent. John, good. Conducted a regional gap analysis. Right on. Out of curiosity, for your gap analyses and needs assessments, are many of you getting consultants to support you with that, or are you doing it independently? Okay. Thank you, Mary. Yeah. Tamika, thank you. Eileen, nice. Very good. That's good job, Eileen. You know, you have there are roles for consultants where they can help you provide, give you some capacity that you may not have internally. Yeah, exactly. I mean, they can really be helpful. At the same time, it's not a proxy. They're not proxies for, frankly, making the best use of the resources you have. For example, like TOPS Pro, going in there, getting your reports, and frankly, just sitting down and looking at them together and figuring out what's important to you and your constituents. Excellent. Good, good, good. Okay, so let's move on to the next slide. Okay. Well, I think you may have answered this a bit, but let's try it. Yeah, of the resources we've shared, which are you most inclined to use and why? Ooh, Ronka, I'm going to call on you for this. Okay, good. Thank you, Ellen. I wish there was a way in Adobe Connect where you could just kind of click somebody else's response to sort of say, yeah, us too, because I imagine that would save a lot of people from typing. Oh, good. Oh, good, Elena. Webinars. Remember, there are lots of recorded webinars that can really help with your planning. And I'm not suggesting you do this. Oftentimes on long drives, I'll listen to webinars and trainings and things like that. And while I don't get the full effect because I'm not watching it, it's one way to sort of help kind of get my head around what we need to do and things like that. Oh, good, good. Regional networking and training. Oh, Dana, yes, you're 100% right. Very useful to actually talk with people. I feel like that should be some sort of subtitle to any strategic planning endeavor. Very useful to talk to people. Oh, Chrissy, you did the whole planning tool and human-centered design thing. That's outstanding. Good job. Thank you, Jody. Good, good, good. Templates have helped wrap around. Oh, that's good. Nova and TopShore, absolutely. So smart. Yes. Use what you have. Get in there. And for all those of you who don't know or haven't checked, Nova does have, it shows data for every consortium. And, I think if your intention is good, there's some real value in just taking a look to see, well, okay, how are other folks doing? What kinds of plans do they have? We will? So Neil, maybe you could speak to this actually, but in a minute. Self-assessment tool. Thank you, Nancy. Templates. Good, good, good. By the way, remember you can unlock those templates. You can put them into a form that is easier to share with folks as long as we get it back in a structure that looks the same. That's okay. Thank you, Neil, for clarifying. Yeah, please don't be afraid to reach out to TAP for help. If we don't have resources among the TAP group, we know lots of folks and can help find resources for you. Although many of us would be really eager to lend a hand however we can. And we are all over California. So, oh, good. Very good. Good job, Bronca. Oh, that's lovely. You did 1, 2, 3, 4? Oh, so smart. You're actually stealing my thunder. But I love it. Good job, Nancy. As we're moving forward, I would encourage you to, if there are resources you'd really like to see or would like help with, and I think can be either concrete in the sense of, I really would like to know more about, let's say regional data needs, or frankly even how to interpret and make use of the reports that come out of TOPS Pro. Put that in the chat, shoot it over to us, let us know. That is a grand idea. Dana, 2 retreats to identify planning gaps. Oh, very good, very good. That's very good. All right. Good job, everybody. All right, let's see here. Let's go ahead and move forward just a bit. But feel free to keep popping things in there because we're going to capture it. Oh, Emma, I was waiting for you to chime in here. I knew it. Good job. Working with the Workforce Development Board. Oh, good. Very good. Let's not forget, yeah, this is the point of consortium planning, right? Work with those partners. All right. Let's see here. Okay, so this is just a quick primer. We're not going to go full-fledged into 3-year planning. We've got webinars about it. I'm happy to answer any questions that may have arisen as a result of the work that you've already done. But by and large, I just kind of want to talk about this 3-year plan and put it within the context of larger strategic planning. So when we designed the 3-year plan template and resources, we really tried to design it around to have an implicit approach where and that the approach that would be implicit is one that we know actually works, right? So beginning with evaluating the sort of state you're actually in, identifying who your partners are, figuring out how and well you are situated relative to the work of your other educational providers and social services within your communities. Then identifying, who your really target populations are, what their needs are, what their target populations are, what opportunities may be available to expand programs relative to what we know about regional labor market opportunities. And then from there, going into developing your actual goals and strategies, and then finally piloting and implementation, which I think, we've talked about that in a few different ways. If you've gone through human-centered design, then training, then no doubt you're approaching this with that frame, and I think that's a good thing. If you haven't, ultimately what I think piloting and implementation that section is intended to do is really 2 things. One, to kind of allow you to drill down a bit and get a little bit more concrete regarding some of your key strategies. Most likely, those will be the strategies that you plan to implement in the next 12 months or so. It also, I think, is an opportunity to really think a bit about how your plan will fit into a continuous improvement model. Because in the end, right, as you implement, right, if you want it to be successful, that plan has to still be kind of a living document, right? And frankly, it also needs to be in continued conversation with your stakeholders. Okay, so before we move on to the next one, is there anything that folks, any questions anybody has around the three-year planning approach generally, or template materials, anything like that?
Greg, I would just add, this is Neil, that it's okay to add, if you want to customize the template, add charts and pictures, we're okay with that. It's really for your local partners and for your regional consortia to operate at the state level. We're not really going to be approving these plans. It's really going to be approved by you, the members, and your consortia. So focus on making this plan for you and for the purpose of moving forward in your region, and don't think about it as an exercise for the state. So I just wanted to add that, so if anybody was thinking they have to cross all the T's and dot all the I's and make it that there's going to be some kind of grading or whatever, it's not going to happen. It's really going to happen at the local level.
Thanks, Neil. And to echo that, yeah, the plan is really yours, and so you can augment it, hence why the template is you can actually unlock it. Having, while no one at the state or any of us are going to be looking to punish you for anything here, I would keep in mind that the obligation is to your community, right? And so, despite the, and I'm really, I think, speaking, preaching to the choir here, but we have an ethical responsibility, and everyone I know who works in adult ed, I think, takes that very seriously. So I'm not really worried about it, but it still bears reminding now and again. So Bronca's asked, for the annual plans going forward, how will our goals translate? Are we still going to fill it in terms of our regional strategies? Does it, Neil, try to through a template, and it does not allow for wraparound data in the cells. And you can actually just unlock them, unlock the template. And you can actually, if you unlock it, you can add rows, delete rows, do whatever you need. For Bronca, goals translating, fill it in terms of, it sounds like what you're asking is, will in NOVA and in your annual plans, basically, will your major strategies be captured in NOVA, and will your annual plans have to align to those strategies? Neil, I think that's a question for you, but what I can say minimally conceptually, they absolutely should. So irrespective of whether NOVA, it's a feature in NOVA, that is something that you're going to want to be planning toward.
So Greg, let me just respond to Bronca. I didn't see the question. So the way this is going to work, the 3-year plans are your vision, and then every year you do your annual plan in NOVA, which you create the strategies from your 3-year plan, and then you share that with your members, and then your members add their work plans under those strategies based on that 3-year overall vision, and then it gets down to the members doing the work plan and the budget that drives the actual spending and expense reporting. So it's all connected, and you'll be doing this every year. That's why this 3-year plan is so important, because it's going to be driving those annual plans every year. So you will be doing that annual plan August 15th. It'll be due in NOVA, just like it was last year. Is that the question? Yeah. No, I'm sorry. I just want to make sure I.
So then it sounds like for the 3-year plan, that's going to sort of stand as the vision, big document, but it doesn't sound like NOVA will be, you'll be excerpting strategies from that 3-year plan. Instead, you'll do that on an annual basis. And basically the assumption, it sounds like, is that whatever you're putting in for your consortium annual plan is expected to align to your 3-year, but those strategies aren't going to be necessarily visible in NOVA, except insofar as the 3-year plan is available in NOVA.
That's correct, Greg. Because we wanted the 3-year plan to have a little more local flair or regional flair, We didn't want to have it cookie cuttered into NOVA. We wanted you guys to express maybe your own regional vision the way you want it. And then when we get to the annual plan in NOVA, then everybody has to follow the same format. So hopefully that makes sense.
Veronica, does that answer your question? Excellent. And Emma, I know you have my phone number, so if you are having difficulty unlocking that template, just call me. I will happily talk you through it or even do it for you. So Nicholas, for any of you who are having trouble, I'll be glad to help you directly. Just if you're going to email me, CC TAP, or just CC TAP, and they'll send it to me. Either one. Yeah, I had a feeling somebody was going to chime in and correct that. Yeah, so let me rephrase. Email TAP and put in the subject line, Greg, unlock this thing. Anyway. Thank you. All right, so let's go ahead and we'll move forward. If there are additional questions around that, just pop them in and we'll go. So for those of you who have actually undertaken strategic planning, typical processes include these, especially as it relates to the sort of pre-planning phase. So I would venture to say that actually all of this fits under it in some form or another. Visioning, well, and actually they're a little bit out of order, so just as an FYI, if you were going in sequence, it would actually be visioning, internal and external assessment, and then that would be followed by goal setting. So visioning is really developing that shared vision for the community. Some of the processes that might include, right, are convening your stakeholders. It might include looking at regional demographic data. It's really high level thinking about conceptually about the change you'd like to see. Optimally, it's informed by a deep knowledge of what the needs are, but at the same time, you've got the process to help validate some of those assumptions. And so the goal here is to start with the end in mind. And this is really, I think, the phase where you're going to be thinking aspirationally. It, most often is done at a leadership level. Most often it's done by having regional or, leadership convenings. For translating that into consortium terms, if you're visioning, this would be starting, say, with your board members. It could also mean, meeting with all of your superintendents and the president and really hashing out really what things ought to look like, because we often believe we're on the same page, and while we have similar intentions, that doesn't necessarily mean that the visions correspond, and only by really coming together and talking about them in an open and honest way will you begin to see them coalesce. And once they do, you'll find quickly that you're no longer alone in feeling like you have the onus on you to achieve all of this major change. And also the folks who you might historically have seen as being competitors can also quickly become friends. Internal assessment is the piece that I think we're going to talk most about today. External, where it's, of course, understanding your strengths and capabilities and so forth. This is done by a number of things usually. I think the most important is a SWOT analysis. If you haven't done a SWOT analysis or have no idea what I'm talking about, please, let us know, and we can see if we can't make that either a webinar or provide some resources and training. It's a really powerful approach to figuring out, what you are most poised to accomplish, and that can be at a consortium level. It can also be at an agency level. External assessment, of course, is a lot of what we've been talking about. A lot of the resources tap that. So understanding what the demographics are, what are the characteristics that make up your communities as it relates to the services that you provide. So are there correlations that might indicate unique needs? Oftentimes we begin external analyses. Well, I don't always say begin, I take that back. I feel like when it comes to strategic planning, we're often, if we're feeling like it's a compliance-driven activity, we often basically take work from anecdotes. Basically we assume we already know what those needs are, based often on what you're hearing from students anecdotally, or what you might have heard another set of agencies talking about. And not to discount that, I think that there's real value in starting there. In fact, I can't think of a single example in my time as a consultant helping consortia plan where an agency lead had a hunch about what students might need. And I've never found them to be wrong, but what I have found them to be is less nuanced than they could be. So taking the step of really understanding what the needs are within your community based on using some formal tools like student surveys or focus groups, conducting focus groups in the way that, for example, human-centered design training is helping to enable folks to do. It's also, large-scale surveys can help with this, and, talking with folks. I was speaking pretty recently with somebody actually engaging in an external assessment who had a notion about where she wanted to place some services, and was ready to camp on their front door to make it happen. And so, to that I recommended, hey, why don't you camp on their front door and talk to them about who goes there and whether you might have an opportunity to actually chat with them about the kinds of services they might need, just to get a little bit, and when they might need them, right, to get that more nuanced information. Asset mapping, and that's the last piece I'm going to talk about for that, we're going to be talking about in detail next week. I think it's next week. My colleague Charisse is going to be leading that, and she's awesome. She's done it a bunch, and she actually used to be a an adult school principal, and so she's amazing. Anyway, there was a chat somebody asked about. Okay, let me go back through very briefly. What is it? What is it? What is it? I don't know. Can you, what, huh? SWOT, oh, sorry. I was like, what is it? SWOT analysis, SWOT, SWOT, stands for Strengths, Weaknesses, Opportunities, and Threats. Thank you, Dana. It's an activity as well as an outcome, where there is, typically it's sort of if you imagine just a piece of paper with, that's divided into 4 equal sections, into quadrants. One quadrant represents what your strengths are as an organization, and then you work to identify what those are and list those, and you do the same thing for weaknesses, threats, and opportunities, which may actually be the same thing. And then what you would do is really coordinate with your planning group to identify, okay, what are the strengths that you really think, well, which ones are really accurate and at the grain size, and which of those strengths do you think that you are best positioned to leverage for your plan? And then you do the same thing around your weaknesses, which are the things that you think you need to improve on in order to be effective, et cetera, et cetera. But we can talk more about that, and actually, if there's a need for it, we can absolutely provide a webinar on how to actually lead a SWOT analysis with a group. Okay, so with that, which of those processes that we just discussed have you struggled with most? Good. Oh, Brett, yeah, thank you. Good, good, good. So we've got folks, okay, the assessment piece. Yes, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and treats. Good job. All right, so we've got, interesting. So we've got some, so it doesn't seem like folks are really struggling with visioning. I find that surprising.
Greg, Bill put into the general chat other resources to make.
Okay. Excellent. Thank you. Show me resources, other resources to make more happen. Bill, it sounds like what your other resources. I'd like to hear more about that. Oh, Bronca, that makes a great deal of sense. So, it's true that if you've, been able to develop those relationships and establish a longer-term vision, and it's not uncommon, for example, for, like our cycle is a 3-year cycle, but oftentimes it can be 5 and 7 years. So it's not entirely surprising, I guess, that some of that still stands. But I would venture to say if you haven't revisited those principles, right, then you're going to want to do that. I would also say that if you don't have a mission statement, so that you should probably develop one. That often falls as part of the visioning process. And if you already have one, that's great. You should probably think about what your mission is going to be for this cycle. But Bill, I want to hear more about this. What is this other resources to make more happen? Oh, yeah. Oh, goodness, yes. Yeah. Everything takes money and time. Yeah. That is the eternal struggle. And I'm going to digress for about 2 minutes, but it'll be brief, I promise. We are in an era, yeah, there really is a lot of reporting going on right now. Bill, good job, Bill. You keep reminding him. Stay on him. I was joking. I think that there is this notion for some that outcome-based planning is just an obvious kind of thing. That somehow, and it's that, hey, that there is some, that there are at least some I've encountered that have difficult time even conceiving of a different way of planning. But I'm actually here to just kind of remind you, and really everybody, that this mode didn't even come into existence until probably, what is it, the 20th century? In fact, the word productivity wasn't even applied to that term didn't show up as being applied to work products at all until I think 1898 or something. Prior to this, all of the planning that you might undertake, right, would be around maintaining labor force that you have. It would really be about process and relationships and people. And I think especially within an industry like ours, there's value in maintaining that mindset to a certain extent. Our job, I think, as educators is to connect with people. And so, and people simply put aren't cogs, and they're not necessarily, and they're not, right? They are not output making machines in and of themselves. Anyway, so it's not, this type of planning effort is difficult and often not easy to conceptualize. Jody's providing some input here that I think is really worth noting. Or actually, it's Amy. So if your region is large, it can be a challenge to focus vision regionally, develop goals that are broad enough to fit everyone. You are so right. And Amy provides a really good approach here. Same thing with Emma. You know, breaking up into subregions is a perfectly good idea. You know, I think that too, with that, you know, how you divide could be a temporary stopgap measure. So case in point, you know, dividing by rural and urban. All of the consortia have some aspect, right, these areas, some of which are urban, some of which are rural, and there is historical tension. I mean, it goes back as far as you can think of, right, between rural and urban. And the needs of, you know, the students in those areas are vastly different. And so that's one way of grouping together to sort of hash out what might be possible. You know, you could also think in terms of size and scale. So as well as, frankly, newness of program. So, you know, I've seen across the state lots of benefit gained by smaller new programs by working with larger programs. At the same time, there are challenges that these small programs have that these large programs can't even conceive of. And so, you know, finding, you know, what's going to work best within your consortium is going to vary, but these are at least a couple approaches. And Jody, you know, I know you all do really good work. And if you want to talk about having, you know, some strategies about how that might be accomplished, you know where to find all of us. Sherry has a question, and we encourage you to reach out. Will there be common survey tools? You know, Sherry, that's a great question. You know, but I don't think so. It might be, well, I don't think so. You know, there are some surveys that had been available. I don't know if they still are. I think LAUSD had posted theirs from AB 86. I think the questions still remain. I would love that picture, Bill, absolutely. CTE survey tools, planning survey tools. Neil, do you want to talk about what are the CTE survey tools?
So what that is CASAS and LAUSD, and I think might have been a few other K-12 agencies ran a pilot on getting better CTE survey data. And so that's something we're looking at it using on a statewide scale, but nothing related to planning surveys that Sherry's talking about.
Got it. Okay. You know, Sherry, feel free to reach out. I mean, there are some examples that are out there. I would encourage you not to, if you're going to survey students in particular, you're really going to want to engage, you know, a consultant for this. Just, one, the data will be better, and you're going to want, the phrase statistically significant pops into my head here. But that, anyway, just reach out and we can at least try to help. Oh, good. Well, never mind. There is value in that, and I'm sure, Sherry, if your consortium would be willing to share them publicly, you know, I'm sure that you know, the office would love to review, and if everything seems copacetic, post them, because I agree with you. Okay, so we've got about 15 minutes now to go into pre-planning self-assessment. So I'm going to try to go quickly through the self-assessment tool. All of you should be reasonably familiar with this, right? The goal of the self-assessment tool is to punish everybody who's not doing well. No, I'm joking. No, it's not. It is there to help engage your stakeholders, help generate action plans, and help to create opportunities for more open and meaningful partnerships. Last time we talked about the self-assessment, we didn't really get into what it was actually structured around, right? And so, or how it was structured. So there are 5 sections: capacity, entry, et cetera, I'll let you look at that in your own time. They correspond to the loss momentum framework, which is a framework for student success that was designed by I think it was not Career Ladders, goodness no, it's Completion by Design, and is really the, I think the primary framework for even like guided pathways, right? So anyway, there are Oh, good. I'm glad to hear that, Ellen. So there are those 5 areas. Those we're calling those quality indicators. Each one is followed by a key concept that describes the intent of each section. Those are followed by measures. We're calling them measures for lack of a term, a different term, but it's really the sort of the thing that would be true if you got all 5s. Think of it that way. And then finally, the rubrics provide examples elucidating degrees of effectiveness. We've gotten lots of questions around, hey, why aren't there examples for 2 and 4? And the reason for that is that it isn't meant to be a Likert quiz type scale. These are examples of what effective collaboration in this case might be, but they're how that might look within your consortium will vary. And so, 1, 3, and 5 are there just as kind of, general markers. Okay, let's see here. Moving on. The rubric. Okay, that's another thing we didn't talk about. What does it mean if you're getting all 1s? What does it mean if you're getting all 5s? Again, since it's not meant to be punitive, the descriptors here are intended to sort of help provide a sort of an area of focus. So, if you get lots of 1s, that indicates a strong need for improvement, right? And, that the consortium has an urgent need to actually address this. If you're taking it as a member agency, then, insert member, replace consortium with member, so on and so forth. If you're getting lots of 3s, you're doing pretty well, but hey, there's some improvement that could be made. If you're doing 5, then you know what, you should run these webinars. But, let's see, and actually, yeah, I'm not even joking. Yes, you should be running these webinars. We have a lovely stage from which to pontificate. Okay. I'm seeing some great input from Eileen here, and I want to actually get to that. So, and I'm going to do them right after this slide here. So, self-assessment practice are really just 4 steps in using it, right? Figure out who's going to use it, right? Determine the areas for self-assessment and form those teams. So, if you know there are specific areas that you want to focus in on, then just use those sections. If you know you've got problems with capacity, or frankly, let's say you just don't have enough buy-in from the rest of your member agencies, from your counselors, your teachers, or whomever, then just focus on capacity. Again, it's not it's not an evaluation tool in a strict sense. It's a way to figure out where you are. Right, and so, take what you need. 2, conduct the self-assessment and share results. So it is, I can't, emphasize this enough. If you ask people to do something, then you have to share that back with them, and you have to share it back in a way that's positive and will optimally, help to drive change. Any improvement that needs to be made is improvement that, the team needs to make. And so, you want to be careful about how it is that is communicated, and you just don't want to hide it. 3, identifying areas for improvement and develop action plans. So in your shoes, what I would do is quite literally take the rubrics that you have and where you didn't do as well as you would have liked, and think that it really warrants some action planning, then I would take those and, on a piece of paper next to it, draw 2 columns, one that says evidence and the other that says action, and fill it in. So for each of those areas, what evidence is there that you're not doing well, what evidence would you need basically to do well, and then what are the next steps, immediate next steps. Okay. John asked a question, what do you mean areas for self-assessment? We want all members to complete individually first. John, it really varies. So when we're putting this together as part of the field team, there were a lot of use cases that, honestly, I didn't even think about. And I had some assumptions about who would be using it and who ought to use it. But I got to tell you, folks made some really cogent arguments about, which groups should be using it and to what end. And so I don't think everybody has to take the assessment first, and I don't think that it should necessarily be members if that's not really who you're working with or what your goal is. I think, John, too, part of your question is, if you're deciding which areas to work on first, isn't that putting the chicken before the egg or the egg before the chicken or whatever? And in some ways, sure, but one can make that argument, but at the same time, it's not like we're working in a vacuum. You all know each other. If you know every day that you're struggling to, with capacity in the form of, administrative capacity, member capacity, then, there's not going to be, you don't need an assessment to tell you that you're struggling with capacity. What you really want to do is identify the specific areas where by improving, you might be able to improve your capacity, right? So, all right. And then lastly, evaluate success, the action plans, and intended results. So this would be the next step. Okay. So we've heard a bit. We've got a few minutes left. And what I want to hear actually next is from all of you. We've heard from Eileen. So Eileen, your consortium took the self-assessment and did better than you actually thought, right? You said different stakeholders were not in complete agreement about the ratings, and that worked for further discussion. Excellent point. So, we also had a bit of debate ourselves when we were kind of piloting this with the field team. Hey, I don't know if I know what this means, or, does that mean I should hit NA? And the answer was no. In fact, if there are gaps in knowledge, that's a place where you need to talk, because remember, the goal is you're not scoring each other. You're finding, it's a tool to help engage with one another. Okay, so we've got two questions up here. One, so how do you think you'll use the assessment tool? And if you've used it already, I would love to hear how you did. We've got some of that in here. So, for example, did you pilot it with your consortium? Did you have agencies do it? Did you, say, select counselors, right? Oh, great, Dana. That's really, really great. I've been thinking about this a lot. Feel free to break it up into other forms too. So take it, adapt it, turn it into a survey, right? You can use it as part of professional development, right? Take those sections, and maybe that even becomes part of your, 3-year cycle planning, where it's going to become part of your, for all of your shared counseling staff, all of you will be utilizing this as an input for your professional development planning. You could do the same thing at the member level. Oh, good. And that's fine. I think that's great. If there are areas that everybody, is going to find they could probably improve on. I mean, the framework that we used we actually were pretty ambitious in that we did look across states to see what standards were available and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But we also are student focused, right? And we are outcome driven. And the loss momentum framework is a really effective model for not really ensuring, but promoting student success. And if you haven't heard of it, I really recommend looking into it. I would also add, though, this model of continuous support with strong emphasis on, again, sort of support. It's academic as well as wraparound support. A sort of a coordinated approach to providing training and connecting folks with opportunities, etc. Oh goodness, we have like 3 minutes left. And I think that's a great idea. And then the last question is, what do you do with the assessment information after submitting? Good, thank you, good job, Bill. That's exactly right. Taking it to the meeting, good, absolutely. I think this is a really great example. These are really great examples. Okay. Unfortunately, we got to move on, but I'm so eager to see how folks did. And really, if if you're willing to share results, or maybe that's one of the things we can do later on, have some conversations about how and you've utilized it and the impact that maybe it had on your planning. That would just be outstanding. We have a few additional slides here. I think some are housekeeping-ish, and so let me just quickly scan through. We do have a couple more webinars coming up that are part of this series. So January 22nd, this is the community asset mapping. I've seen it. It's outstanding. And again, Charisse knows what she's doing. And I mean, you will learn a lot. When I saw, frankly, what she did, it made me embarrassed about this presentation. In fact, with that, Charisse, can you talk about this? Really, you're going to do a much better job than I am.
Yes, absolutely. We will be working next week. I know we're at time on community asset mapping as it relates to your 3-year plan, going through and making connections with the guidance and the template. So I'm looking forward to having you all back next week.
Thank you, Charisse. Indeed. And then last, 3-year planning, where do we go next? This is where we get like an opportunity to sort of really pull it all together. So we're really going to look to you here. Let us know if you've got some input on what you'd like to see in the short term to really help move your planning process along. Please tell us, and we will plan to that. Any questions? All right. Well, with that, I think we can close here just with a quick reminder. Remember, reach out to TAP. All of you should have the email address. You certainly know where it is on the web. Oh, Michelle, you're so right. And yet the irony, Michelle, right, is that by doing it, it raised exactly that challenge, right? I love those unintended opportunities and learning. All right, with that, I'm going to sign off. Please feel free to reach out. Thank you for all of your good work, and keep it up.
Sudie, do you have the, are you going to be able to post the evaluation, or is that something Melinda can do?
I'm about to end this right now, and can you guys hop back into the room for our huddle?
Okay.